Hey everyone! Welcome to Update X24H, your go-to channel for the latest news, hottest dramas, breaking stories, and all the buzz from the world of entertainment. We're here to keep you updated, entertained, and always in the loop. Hit that subscribe button and join our growing family, because here at Update X24H, we bring you the news that matters, the drama you love, and the stories you can't miss. Thanks for being part of our community. Let's stay connected, stay updated, and keep the good vibes rolling. 2 months after a beloved actor leaves this world, the headlines should be calming down. Instead, certain institutions are suddenly nervous, an unexpected document appears online, and ordinary citizens begin to behave like quiet investigators. Tonight on Update X24H, we are not here to chase sensationalism. We are here to talk about a leaked report, a grieving public, and one simple, powerful question. How far are people willing to go, just to make sure one life is not reduced to a single sentence? Stay with me. The story began with a line so brief that many people could read it in a single breath. An unfortunate fall after drinking, a few official phrases, and then the page seemed ready to be turned. For some incidents, that might be enough. But when the person at the center is someone millions have welcomed into their living rooms through dramas and variety shows, the gap between the simplicity of the announcement and the complexity of people's emotions becomes impossible to ignore. Viewers remembered not just a name, but a quiet smile, a gentle way of speaking, a body of work that had followed them through different seasons of life. In that light, a minimal explanation felt strangely hollow. It was not that people wanted scandal. Many simply felt that a human life should not be closed with a sentence that sounded like a formality. From there, questions began to ripple quietly across the internet. Why so few details? Why such a quick conclusion? Why did some clips and testimonies feel misaligned with the official timeline? It was not one single doubt, but a collection of small discomforts. One short statement, repeated over and over, did not calm the public mind. Instead, it opened the door to a storm of questions that refused to disappear. Into this atmosphere of unease, something unusual appeared. A lengthy document, written not by professionals, but by ordinary citizens. It did not arrive with a logo or a press conference. It arrived quietly, shared from one user to another, until people realized they were looking at nearly 40 pages of careful observation. Its authors did not claim authority. They introduced themselves implicitly as witnesses who could not ignore what they were seeing and hearing. They collected weather records, rewatched videos frame by frame, and walked through locations that had become familiar through rumors and online discussions. They took notes on lighting, angles, roads, and entrances, not to perform a spectacle, but to make sense of details that felt unresolved. What struck many readers was the tone. The report did not shout. It did not demand that everyone accept its conclusions. Instead, it resembled a quiet laboratory of public concern. Hypotheses, comparisons, timelines, and open questions. People were moved by the thought that, without being paid, without official backing, a small group had given their time and energy to treat one incident with the seriousness usually reserved for major investigations. In a world where attention spans are often short, the very existence of such a document, long, structured, and deeply human, felt like a form of respect. The phrase "agencies in panic" does not necessarily describe people running or shouting. It can also describe a more subtle discomfort. That moment when separate versions of events begin to touch, and the seams no longer line up smoothly. As more eyes turned to the leaked report, listeners and readers began comparing it not only with their memories, but also with official remarks. Certain details stood out. Paths that had once been visible in older images appeared altered. Access points no longer resembled locations people thought they recognized. There were differences between the supposed timing of rain and the weather described in various clips. None of these elements on their own proved anything. Renovations are normal. Cities change. Memories can be imperfect. Yet, when placed side by side, these small differences created friction. It was this friction that made institutions appear unsettled. Statements that once sounded firm now met an audience that could verify dates, cross-check maps, and replay audio. The landscape of information had shifted. It was no longer a one-way broadcast, but a shared space where citizens could quietly ask, "Does this fit?" Panic in this context is less about chaos and more about the challenge of facing a public that has both emotional investment and access to tools of verification. The clash of details did not automatically mean wrongdoing, but it did reveal a gap between the level of explanation people expected and what they had been given so far. Beneath all the timelines, weather charts and photographs, lies something far simpler and far deeper. A sense that a life has been wounded twice. Once by the incident itself, and once more by the fear that its story might be left incomplete. This is where the epilogue of the report touched people so strongly. The author admitted he was not a devoted fan, not someone who had followed every project or memorized every interview. Yet, he wrote of being unable to sleep after hearing certain recordings, unable to shake the feeling that something about the narrative did not sit right. His words framed the report not as entertainment, but as a moral reaction. Not curiosity but conscience. Not obsession, but a refusal to treat a human life as a brief headline. Many readers recognized themselves in that confession. They too had carried a quiet unease. They too had wondered how quickly the world moves on, and how easily those without power can be forgotten. The wounded life became a symbol, not only of one actor, but of all those whose stories risk being simplified beyond recognition. At its core, this is not a call for outrage without direction. It is an appeal for dignity. The heart of the matter is the belief that even when a person can no longer speak, the way we talk about them still matters. The report, with all its imperfections, became one way of saying, this life deserved more care. Anger is often the first reaction when people feel that something is unjust or incomplete. It is powerful, but if it stops there, it can easily turn into exhaustion or harm. A more hopeful question is, what can be built out of that anger? This is where a fresh perspective begins to emerge. Some communities have chosen to honor Menglong not by repeating every rumor, but by revisiting his work with renewed appreciation. They share scenes that touched them, lines that inspired them, and moments where his performances brought comfort or laughter. In doing so, they gently shift the focus from the circumstances of his passing to the meaning of his presence. Others are using this case as a starting point to discuss broader issues: the mental and emotional pressures in the entertainment world, the responsibilities of media outlets, and the importance of reliable information in times of crisis. Workshops, live streams, and online discussions have begun to appear, not to sensationalize but to educate. There are also suggestions to channel collective emotion into constructive initiatives. Scholarships for acting students, donations to organizations that support emotional well-being, or projects that promote ethical storytelling. None of these can change the past, but they can influence the culture that shapes future stories. In this way, anger slowly transforms. It does not disappear, but it gains direction. It becomes less about pointing fingers, and more about refusing to let a painful moment pass without learning something from it. On the surface, the report speaks about dates, locations, and recordings. It examines rain patterns, city lights, and possible timelines. But beneath all of that, it is saying something more profound about the kind of society people wish to live in. It says that many are no longer comfortable with silence that feels too swift. They do not demand perfection from institutions, but they do hope for explanations that match the weight of a human life. It says that ordinary citizens are prepared to spend their evenings and weekends reading, walking, comparing, and writing, simply because their conscience tells them that something here needs more light. It also quietly acknowledges its own limitations. The authors do not present themselves as judges. They know they do not own the full picture. Yet, by sharing their work openly, they invite others to think, to question, and to care. In that sense, the document is less a verdict and more a conversation starter. For many readers, what mattered was not that every line was correct, but that someone had tried to resist forgetfulness, tried to treat one person's departure as worthy of serious attention, tried to keep a space open where questions could exist without being dismissed as mere noise. Ultimately, the leaked report says this: that truth, whatever form it finally takes, should not be something that fades quietly into the background. It should be something we walk towards together, patiently, honestly, and with respect for the lives touched along the way.